In this video, we're going to use the find, length, and mid, left, and right functions to pull out information from these names. Now, you'll notice that in this example that we have a consistency in placement. Its last name is the first word, first name is the second word, and then if there are any middle initials, that is, in essence, the third word. If they were mixed up, if some had first names first or first names second or first names last, then you might have to handle these a little differently. You might have to kind of like see if you can get the data in a better format. But here we have the consistency. So what we want to do is our goal is to put the full name. If we look at column H, we're going to have the full name, which is going to be first, middle, and last name. So you'll notice that the common theme here, we can refer to it as a delimiter, is a space. So what I want to find here is, I know I'm going to need to use that because what I'm going to break it out as is I'm going to use the last name and I'm going to use the first name. Oh, and I forgot I need to add one more thing here. So let me do that. We need to find the length too. Thought I had added that. No problem. So we want to find the last name and then we want to find the first name and middle name together. So we're going to use two different functions to do that. So the first thing I want to do, I'm just going to scooch these over, is I want to use define to find the space. So even though that this first word has two spaces, define is going to find the first space. So we'll type in equal find. We want to find what are our text. So here we're going to use double quotes, space, double quotes, comma, and it wants to know our text. So we want to use this last one, the trim that we did from the previous video. And then we'll hit enter. So if we look at this, gains, G-A-I-N-E-S, that's 6 characters. And then we wanted to find the space, which is the 7th character. So we'll just copy that down. And then let's center that, make it look nice. The length will just be the number of characters that this text string is in length. So I'll center that as well so it looks nice. Okay, so the last name happens to be at the very beginning of the text, so we know we're going to use the left function. We want to know the text string we're going to be using, that is G2. But now we want to know the number of characters. This is one reason why we found the space. We know that that is the 7th character in this particular string. But if we were just to put in 7, and then I copied it down, it would give me the first 7 characters of every text. So that's why I use the find function. So we'll just click on E2. Now the problem here, not a major problem, is that when we retrieve these 7 characters, that's going to include a space. And we may or may not want a space in our text. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell Excel to do 6. So we're going to subtract 1 because we know gains is 6 letters long. Stone is 5 letters long. So we're going to take what the character position of the space is and we're just going to subtract 1. And then that will give us just gains. It's not the end of the world if you include an extra space there, but it's not necessary. And if you were to put this in a letter where you're making a mailing address and you are actually starting with last name, then you may have more spaces than you want, or especially if we did first name and middle initial. So you want to try to just bring the characters you need without having any extra characters. So the first name and middle name, we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're going to use the mid function. You could also use the right function, but I'm going to use the mid function. And because it's in the middle of the text, it's, well, not the middle, but it's midway point in the text. So the text string is, again, D2. So now we want to know, I want to start with the word, the letter T in Thomas. So we could use the find, which was E2. That'll give us our space. But then if we add one to that, then we actually are starting at 7 plus 1 is 8. We're starting at the 8th character, which is what we want to do. So this is where you may want to add or subtract numbers depending on where you want to position your starting point and the number of characters. Now, the number of characters. Well, the total string itself is 16 characters long. And we don't want the first 7 characters because that's the last name plus the space. So if we take the length, which is F2, and then we subtract that position for the space, which is E2, that'll basically give us 9 characters. And so Thomas is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the period is the 9th character. And then we'll copy that down. So in this example, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here for a moment. We use the mid function to go somewhere midpoint in the text. So we knew that the first name started at position 8. We just sort of count them over. So we can find that by using the find to give us our space, and then we just added one. Now to tell it how many characters to give me, I need to know how many characters are in the last name and the middle name, including any extra punctuation. So we knew that the length of this string, first name, last name, middle name, all that stuff, punctuation, spaces, are 16. Well, we used this first 7 already. So we know that Thomas is starting at the 8th character. So if we take 16 and minus 7, that gives us 9 characters. That's how many we wanted to use. Now, we could have done this by using the right function. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put it next to it for a moment, just so you can see that it should work. So again, the text is D2. Now we know that it's going to start at the end, but we want to know how many characters we want. Well, if we want to start at the end, that means we're starting at character 16. So that'll be F2. And then we want to subtract those first 7. We don't want those. And then we'll hit enter. So same answer. I think the first example using the mid was a little more complicated, but I wanted to introduce it so you at least saw it. So as I've said before, you use the method that works the best for you. So sometimes there are no absolute right or wrong answers. Let me get this back to the way it was before. There we go. So I thought mid, my notes said right, so I introduced both of them. So now we want to combine these two. So again, we use our old ampersand. So we want the first name first. So that will be H2 ampersand. We want to include a space. So double quote, space, double quote, and then we want to have the last name. Oops. I don't know why I did that. I'm not editing the formula, that's why. All ready? Oh, I did include an ampersand, that's why. Did that purposely, not really. So if we read this out again with text, we're going to combine the contents of H2 and a space, and which I kept forgetting to include G2 because I want to include that second field. And so if we go back to the last name, and if we look at, we subtracted that 1 because I didn't want to include the space. If we had not done that, we really wouldn't see any difference over here, but the idea is not to include any extra characters than you need. and then we'll just copy that down. And so that's just another example of using the left, the right, the mid, and the find and the length command. And we'll have a more advanced one on the next video. Thank you.